I have this really specific memory from when I was about 6 years old. I was being bullied really bad in primary school, and I remember my teacher called my parents in to tell them that I had anger issues. And honestly, for a really long time, that became part of how I saw myself. I don't remember every detail of what happened, but I do remember what led up to it. There was this group of girls in my class who would pick on me constantly, every day. They'd laugh at me, they'd copy the way I spoke, they would exclude me from games, they'd whisper about me in a way that was loud enough so that I could actually hear. You know, like the kind of bullying where technically nothing serious is happening, but it slowly makes you feel like there is something fundamentally wrong with you. And then one day in the playground, I was cornered and they were shouting at me and trying to pull my hair, and I just snapped. I retaliated, I shouted back, I screamed, I cried, I might have thrown something. But all of a sudden, I was the problem, not the weeks or the months of being pushed to that breaking point, not the overwhelm, not the humiliation I experienced, just my reaction. And looking back now, after being diagnosed autistic as an adult, I see that moment completely differently, because autistic anger often isn't really anger in the way that people think it is. It's overwhelm, it's panic, it's a feeling of injustice, it's your nervous system basically screaming because it physically cannot hold anymore. But when you're autistic, especially as a girl, people usually don't see the build-up. They only see the explosion. And I think growing up like that teaches you something really dangerous. You learn that your emotions are too much, that your reactions are wrong, that you're difficult or dramatic or aggressive or sensitive or rude or whatever label people want to put on you. But nobody asks how you got there. Nobody notices that you were spending all day trying to tolerate things that genuinely hurt you. And for me, anger has become this really complicated emotion because I was never taught how to process it properly. I was taught to suppress it, to push it down, to be good, to stop overreacting and to just calm down. But the thing about suppressed emotions is they don't disappear, especially in autistic people. They build up in the body and they sit in your chest and your jaw until eventually something realistically tiny happens, like someone interrupts you, or a plan changes, or a room is too loud, or someone says something unfair, and then all of a sudden you are overwhelmed beyond words. But then after that explosion comes the guilt, the horrible spiral of shame where you just think, why did I react like that? Or why can't I just be normal? And like, why does everything seem to affect me so deeply? And now I know a lot of the anger I experienced as a child was actually just autistic distress. Not manipulation, not me being nasty or abusive, but distress. There's also this huge connection between autism and justice that I never fully understood before my diagnosis. A lot of autistic people experience things very intensely when something feels unfair or cruel or hypocritical. And as a child especially, I didn't have the emotional regulation skills or the language to explain that feeling, so instead, it came out as anger. And when people only respond to the outward behaviour instead of the cause, you start internalizing this belief that you are bad instead of understanding that you're just overloaded. And I think that's why getting diagnosed has been so emotional for me, because I keep finding myself revisiting memories that I used to be ashamed of and realising that little baby me wasn't broken or crazy, she was overwhelmed and unsupported. She was autistic. And honestly, I still struggle with anger now, not in like the stereotypical way where people imagine, but in the way where the overwhelm builds and builds and builds until I either shut down completely or suddenly cry and snap and shout because my brain can't process any more input. But now I try at least to approach it differently. Instead of asking what's wrong with me, I try and ask myself what pushed me past my limit. And that shift has changed a lot for me. I think a lot of autistic people, especially late diagnosed women, carry these stories of being labelled as angry and difficult or too emotional when really we were just trying to survive in environments that did not understand us. So if you relate to this, I want you to know that your reactions are still your responsibility, but understanding where they come from matters just as much. Compassion and accountability can coexist, and maybe some of the versions of yourself that you're ashamed of were actually just unsupported. So that's good to think about. Bye.